The morning sky over Umunzi village was shrouded in thick clouds, threatening rain as the air carried the scent of damp soil. Inside a modest mud brick hut, Akunna lay on a straw mat, her body writhing in pain as contractions ripped through her. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead as she clutched her swollen belly. The midwife Nena, a seasoned woman with greying hair and a voice of authority, knelt beside her, whispering prayers to the gods of childbirth. Welcome to Tales by Steph, a home of interesting African stories. Outside, Obi paced restlessly, running a hand over his closely cropped hair. His breath came in short gasps as he listened to his wife's agonized cries. He had never felt more helpless. Every cry she released felt like a dagger to his chest, and he prayed silently, clutching the small amulet around his neck. Let her survive this, he whispered into the early dawn, watching as the first drops of rain splashed onto the dusty ground. Inside, the room was dim, the only light coming from the flickering flame of a small oil lamp. Nena's voice rose in chants as she encouraged Akunna to push. The rain outside began to pour, the rhythmic patter blending with the sounds of labor. After hours of excruciating pain, a cry pierced the air, cutting through the tension like a sharp knife. The baby's cry was loud and healthy, a sound that should have brought joy. Nena smiled as she cleaned the newborn and placed her gently in Akunna's arms. "You have a daughter," she said, her voice warm. Akunna, despite her exhaustion, managed a weak smile as she cradled her baby girl. The child's skin was soft and warm, her tiny fingers curling instinctively around her mother's thumb. "She's beautiful," Akunna whispered, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. But when she looked into her baby's eyes, her breath caught in her throat. The child's eyes, though large and framed by long lashes, were cloudy and unfocused. Panic surged through her as she touched the baby's face, trying to elicit a response. "Nena," she called, her voice trembling. "Something is wrong." The midwife leaned in, examining the baby's eyes with a practiced gaze. She sighed, her face clouded with concern. "She's blind," Nena confirmed, her tone gentle but firm. "She can't see." Akunna's heart shattered. She clutched her baby closer to her chest, sobbing quietly. She had prayed for a healthy child, a daughter she could love and protect. But blindness was a curse in their village, a mark of misfortune. She could already imagine the whispers of the villagers, the pitying glances and the judgment. Obi entered the room moments later, his eyes filled with concern. "Is she all right?" he asked, kneeling beside his wife. Akunna didn't answer immediately. She stared at her baby, her fingers brushing against the soft curls on her head. Finally, she looked up at her husband, tears still streaming down her face. "She's blind, Obi," she said, her voice breaking. Obi's face fell, and for a moment he couldn't speak. The weight of the news settled on him like a heavy burden. But as he looked at his wife and child, he knew that his love for them could not be diminished by this revelation. He reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Akunna's shoulder. "She's still our daughter," he said softly. "We will love her and protect her." Akunna nodded, her sobs quieting. She looked down at her baby and kissed her forehead. "We'll name her Muna," she whispered, "short for Muna Chimso. God is with me." Despite the somber mood, there was a sense of hope in the room. Muna's arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one filled with challenges but also love. Akunna vowed to be her daughter's guiding light, to shield her from the harshness of the world. But fate had a different plan. The first few years of Muna's life were filled with warmth and love. Akunna taught her how to navigate their home by touch, guiding her hands along the walls and showing her where the clay pots and mats were placed. Muna learned quickly, her small fingers exploring every surface with curiosity. She developed a keen sense of hearing, recognizing her parents by the sound of their footsteps and the tone of their voices. Her laughter filled the house, a sound that brought joy to Obi and Akunna. But as Muna grew, so did Akunna's health concerns. The illness came suddenly, like a storm with no warning. It started with fatigue and persistent fevers that no herbal remedy could cure. Akunna grew weaker with each passing day, her once vibrant spirit dimming. Obi did everything he could, seeking the help of traditional healers and offering sacrifices to the gods. But nothing worked. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a fiery orange, Akunna called Muna to her bedside. The child, now 6 years old, sat beside her mother, her small hand resting on Akunna's frail arm. "Mama, why are you so tired?" Muna asked, her voice innocent and filled with concern. Akunna smiled weakly, brushing her fingers through Muna's hair. "I'm just resting, my love," she replied. "But I want you to remember something. You are special, Muna. You may not see the world the way others do, but you have a light inside you. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." Muna nodded, though she didn't fully understand her mother's words. She felt a warmth in her heart, a sense of comfort that only her mother's presence could provide. "I love you, Mama," she whispered. "I love you too," Akunna replied, her voice barely audible. That night, as the stars shimmered above Umunze, Akunna took her final breath, leaving Muna's world darker than it had ever been. Obi was devastated by the loss of his wife. For weeks he mourned in silence, burying himself in work to avoid the pain. Muna, too young to comprehend the depth of the loss, clung to her father, seeking comfort in his presence. But Obi, overwhelmed by grief, struggled to be the parent Muna needed. His once vibrant home became a place of shadows and silence, the absence of Akunna's laughter echoing in every corner. In his desperation to move on, Obi made a decision that would change their lives forever. A year after Akunna's death, he married Nkechi, a woman known for her beauty and charm. To the villagers, Nkechi seemed like the perfect wife, but beneath her polished exterior lay a heart filled with jealousy and cruelty. As Muna sat on the porch of their home, listening to the wind rustle through the palm trees, she had no idea that her life was about to take a darker turn. The love and warmth she had known were about to be replaced by something far more sinister. But even in the face of impending darkness, the light her mother had spoken of remained within her, waiting for the moment it would shine. The village bustled with excitement on the day Obi brought his new wife, Nkechi, home. Dressed in a flowing wrapper of vibrant blue, she carried herself with the elegance of a queen. The villagers admired her beauty, her flawless skin, her captivating smile, and her sweet voice. But beneath the charm was a cunning woman with a heart as cold as stone. At first, Nkechi played the role of a loving stepmother, smiling warmly at Muna and stroking her hair when Obi was around. "We'll be a family," she said softly one evening as she tucked Muna into bed. But as time passed, the kindness faded. The sweet smiles were replaced by sharp glares, and the soft touches turned into harsh grips. When Obi left early in the morning to work the fields, Nkechi's true colours emerged. She would wake Muna at dawn, assigning her chores far beyond her capacity. "Sweep the compound, wash the clothes, fetch water from the stream," she ordered. If Muna tripped or faltered, Nkechi's voice would slice through the air like a whip. "You're worthless, blind and useless." One afternoon, Nkechi sent Muna to fetch firewood deep in the forest, knowing the path was treacherous even for those with sight. Muna stumbled through the thick underbrush, her hands trembling as she felt her way forward. The sound of rustling leaves and distant animal calls heightened her fear. Tears streamed down her face, but she pressed on, remembering her mother's words. "Your light is within you." When she finally returned with the bundle of firewood, Nkechi scoffed. "Took you long enough," she said, snatching the wood from her hands. "Go to bed without supper. Maybe hunger will teach you to be faster." That night, Muna lay on her mat, her stomach growling and her heart aching. She whispered a prayer to her mother's spirit, hoping for strength. Little did she know that fate was already weaving its plan, and Nkechi's reign of terror would soon come to an end. The abuse continued for months, and Muna grew thinner, her once vibrant laughter silenced by fear. But despite everything, her spirit remained unbroken. She had developed an inner strength that Nkechi could not destroy. One evening, while Obi was away, Nkechi's anger reached its peak. Furious that Muna had accidentally spilled a bowl of palm oil, she grabbed a stick and struck the girl repeatedly. Muna's cries echoed through the compound, but there was no one to help. When Nkechi finally stopped, Muna lay curled on the floor, her body bruised and aching. "You'll never be anything," Nkechi spat. "No one will ever care about you." But as Nkechi turned to leave, something strange happened. A gust of wind swept through the room, rattling the windows and extinguishing the lantern. Nkechi froze, her breath hitching as the air grew cold. She could have sworn she heard a voice, Akunna's voice, whispering through the wind. She is not alone. Terrified, Nkechi stumbled out of the room, her heart pounding. From that night on, she was plagued by nightmares of Akunna standing at the foot of her bed. Her eyes filled with silent accusation. Sleep became impossible, and Nkechi's health began to deteriorate. Dark circles formed under her eyes, and her once beautiful face grew pale and hollow. Meanwhile, Muna found comfort in her dreams, where her mother's voice guided her through fields of light. "Your time will come," Akunna's voice promised. "Stay strong, my child." Nkechi's behavior grew erratic. She would snap at the villagers, accuse Obi of neglecting her, and lash out at Muna for the smallest mistakes. Obi, noticing the change, became concerned. "Are you feeling well?" he asked one evening as she sat by the fire, her hands trembling. "I'm fine," she replied, forcing a smile. But the truth was far darker. The nightmares had intensified, and she often woke up drenched in sweat, hearing Akunna's voice calling her name. Desperate to rid herself of the haunting presence, Nkechi sought the help of a local herbalist who prescribed a cleansing ritual. But the ritual only seemed to worsen her condition. The visions of Akunna grew clearer, and the voice became louder, warning her of impending doom. One evening, Nkechi's paranoia reached its breaking point. Convinced that Muna was the source of her torment, she devised a plan to get rid of her, once and for all. She prepared a bowl of poisoned yam porridge and placed it in front of Muna, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Eat," she commanded, watching as Muna hesitated. But before Muna could take a bite, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, knocking the bowl to the floor. Nkechi screamed, clutching her head as Akunna's voice echoed in her ears. "You cannot harm her." In her panic, Nkechi fled the house and ran into the forest, her footsteps echoing through the night. The wind howled around her, and the shadows of the trees seemed to close in. She tripped over a root and fell into the muddy ground, sobbing uncontrollably. The next morning, villagers found her lying by the stream, shivering and delirious. She babbled about ghosts and curses, her once sharp mind fractured beyond repair. Nkechi was taken to a healer, but her condition only worsened. She became a shell of her former self, her beauty fading into a distant memory. Obi, devastated by the truth of his wife's cruelty, turned his attention to Muna. He apologized for his absence and vowed to protect her from harm. The village elders, having learned of Nkechi's mistreatment, held a gathering to discuss her fate. Though some suggested banishment, others believed she had already received her punishment. In the end, Nkechi was left in the care of her family, her once glorious life reduced to a tale of caution. As for Muna, her life took a turn for the better. The villagers, moved by her resilience, embraced her as one of their own. Obi became the father she had always needed, guiding her with love and patience. With time, Muna's laughter returned, and her world, though still dark, was filled with light. One evening, as she sat by the fire with her father, Muna felt a familiar warmth in her heart. She knew her mother's spirit was still watching over her, guiding her every step, and for the first time in years, she felt truly at peace. The light within her had triumphed, and the darkness that once consumed her life was gone. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.